What happened? When a guy asked for a DNA test, just in case, and the results destroyed his entire family tree? Story 1. My cousin Jeremy got a 23andMe kit as a birthday gag gift. He was always joking about not looking like anyone in the family. Tall, blonde, green-eyed, basically a genetic outlier in a sea of short brunettes. He took the test for fun, expecting to laugh about being the mailman's kid. What came back wasn't funny at all. He shared the results in the family group chat, 0% Italian. That was our heritage. All of us supposedly were descended from Sicilian immigrants, but Jeremy had none of it. Instead, he showed 50% Ashkenazi Jewish and a father listed as unknown. We brushed it off. "It's a mistake," said Aunt Marie. "Those tests aren't accurate." But Jeremy dug deeper. He reached out to one of the DNA matches, a man in his 60s from New Jersey. Long story short, this guy was Jeremy's actual father. Turns out Aunt Marie had a brief affair during her separation years ago. She never told anyone. Not her husband. Not Jeremy, not even herself again. Once Jeremy confirmed it, the floodgates opened. His father, my uncle, demanded DNA tests from his 2 daughters. Both came back as not his. Aunt Marie admitted everything after a screaming match that ended with glass shattering. Uncle moved out the next morning. 3 kids, none biologically his. A 30-year marriage. Gone. Jeremy said he only wanted a laugh. Instead, he cracked the entire family apart with a plastic vial and a cheek swab. Story 2. My coworker Tom always joked that his family was probably cursed. His dad was cold. His brother barely spoke to anyone, and his mom had this glazed-over sadness about her. But things came to a head after his son was born. Tom got a paternity test, not because he doubted his wife, but because the baby had a blood type that shouldn't have been genetically possible based on his and his wife's. What the lab said knocked the wind out of him. Not only was the child his, but it also flagged that he might not be related to the man he called Dad. Confused, he submitted a test for his father, mother, and brother. The results unraveled a horror story. Tom wasn't his father's biological son. That wasn't a shock. The shock was that none of them, his mom, dad, or brother, were genetically related to him. Hospital records from the late 80s showed that a nurse had been fired for switching newborns after a mental breakdown. No formal charges, just a quiet hush-hush cover-up. Tom wasn't Tom, at least not in the legal sense. His real parents were 2 towns over. His biological mother had died in 2011, never knowing her son was alive. His brother couldn't look him in the eye after that. His father flat out refused to believe it and accused him of being manipulated. His mother broke down and confessed she had always felt like he was different, but was too scared to dig. Tom says the weirdest part is how no one reached out from his real family after he made contact. They just said, "We already grieved once. We're not doing it again, so now he knows who he is, but he wishes he didn't." Story 3. It started with my fiancé saying he wanted a DNA test for our son, just to be sure. I was insulted, furious even. I had never cheated. But he insisted, saying he needed peace of mind before signing the birth certificate. He got the results and turned white. I thought he'd accuse me of something awful, but instead, he stared at me and whispered, "You need to sit down." According to the test, he wasn't who he thought he was. The system flagged a first cousin-level relative he'd never heard of. After some digging, he contacted this cousin and found out they were actually half-brothers. His mom had an affair with her husband's brother, his uncle, and he was the result. He confronted his mom. She broke down and confessed. His dad wasn't his biological father. His uncle was, and even worse, the family knew. The entire family, grandparents, aunts, cousins, everyone had known since he was a baby. They kept the secret, preserved the family name. My fiancé couldn't forgive them. He cut them all off. We moved out of state last month. He signed our son's birth certificate, but he says sometimes when he looks in the mirror, he wonders if there's more truth out there, still hiding. Story 4. My brother-in-law, Rick, is a classic overthinker. When he and my sister were trying to get pregnant, he bought every test kit under the sun. Ovulation, vitamins, even ancestry, just for fun. Results came complicated. He was expecting Irish and German ancestry, but instead he got nearly 60% East African. Rick was adopted. Except no one told him. He thought it was a joke, but the paperwork he'd found later proved it. His parents had adopted him privately from a small clinic in the 80s. They never told him he was our son no matter what. Rick spiraled. Who were his biological parents? Why was it hidden? Why hadn't he felt like he belonged? He hired a private investigator. Within months, he found his birth alive and living in Kenya, up after fleeing civil unrest. He was born during a refugee crisis and smuggled into the U.S. via a non-legal pipeline through a church. The news hit like a train. My sister tried to help him process, but Rick changed. He started spending more time overseas, met his extended family, and decided he didn't want to raise his kids in America anymore. He filed for divorce, moved permanently, said he had his real story for too long. No one in our family has heard from him in a year. My sister still leaves his toothbrush in the holder. Story 5. When I was 17, I took a DNA test on a whim because my AP Bio class offered extra credit. Thought nothing of it. Until I matched with a half-sister I never knew I had. I thought it was a glitch. My parents were high school sweethearts, married for 25 years. Rock solid, I confronted my mom thinking maybe it was her secret. She just stared at the screen. "That's not possible," she whispered. My dad walked in later, saw what I was showing her, and immediately turned pale. He excused himself, drove off, didn't come home for 2 days. When he came back, he admitted the truth. He'd been a sperm donor in college. He never told anyone, not even my mom. The half-sister I matched with was the result of a donation. So was the other 14 matches we found over the next few weeks. Turns out the clinic overused his donations and didn't inform families or him. Some of my new half-siblings lived within 10 miles of me. One had even gone to my middle school. It destroyed our idea of family. My mom felt betrayed. I felt like a genetic raffle ticket. My dad tried to justify it by saying I was young, broke, and just trying to help people. He never considered the emotional fallout that would come decades later. I still talk to one of my half-sisters, but I don't think any of us really know who we are anymore. Story 6. I worked in a small-town law office where we handled wills, estate disputes, and sometimes paternity issues. One day, a man named Dennis came in looking to contest his father's will. The reason? His older brother got everything, house, land, antique collection, and Dennis got $1,000 and a reminder to be honest. That part stung. Dennis swore he'd never stolen or lied to his dad. He asked for legal advice, and I mentioned DNA could be relevant if there was any suspicion of not being biologically related. Dennis didn't hesitate. He tested himself and compared it with his deceased father's DNA sample on file from a past medical case. The results came back, 0% relation. Not half, not cousin, nothing. Dennis wasn't related to anyone in his family. His mother had passed years earlier, but Dennis dug through old letters, journals, photos. Eventually, he found a letter addressed to a Michael, hidden in the back of a drawer. It was a goodbye letter, emotional, romantic. Michael had been her boss in the late 70s. He was married. They had an affair. She got pregnant. Told no one, not even Dennis. Dennis found Michael, still alive, retired, living 3 hours away. When they met, Michael burst into tears. They looked like twins. So no, Dennis didn't get the house or the land. But he found out why his father always looked at him like a stranger. Story 7. My husband Ben and I did a couple's DNA test because we wanted to check for inherited conditions before trying for a baby. Totally routine, or so we thought. We both uploaded to an ancestry platform to compare genetic traits. That's when I saw it. Ben is your half-brother. I stared at the screen. Thought it was a joke. Called customer service in a panic. They verified the match. 50% shared DNA. I nearly fainted. We called our parents. His mom swore she'd never been with anyone but his father. Mine got very, very quiet. Then she asked if we could talk alone. Turns out my mom had a one-night stand in college with a guy she never saw again. She never even knew his name. But she got pregnant. That was me. She swore she didn't know who he was. No photos. No information. Just a name she barely remembered, Tom. Ben's dad is named Thomas. They did a test. Confirmed. Ben and I are half-siblings. We ended everything. Called off the wedding. He moved out the next day. Our families went into silent, stunned grief. It's been a year. We haven't spoken since. DNA kits should come with a warning label. Some people weren't meant to know the truth. Story 8. My grandpa passed away last year. At the funeral, we all shared stories about him, how he built his business from nothing, loved cigars, and how he was the rock of our family. Afterward, my dad got a strange letter. It was from a woman claiming to be Grandpa's daughter. She included a DNA report matching my dad as her half-brother. We all thought it was a scam until the second letter came, then a third. Eventually, 6 people, all from different states, messaged or mailed DNA proof that they were related to my grandfather. All conceived between the late 1950s and early 1970s. Turns out, while Grandpa was building his business, he was also fathering secret children all over the country. Women he met at trade shows, waitresses, clients. One of them even had a photo of him holding her as a baby. Same watch, same smile. My dad was devastated. Said it made his entire childhood feel like a... My grandma? She just closed her eyes and whispered, I always knew. The family tree didn't just get shaken. It exploded. Story 9. When my buddy Kyle found out his fiancée was pregnant, he was over the moon. But his older brother, let's call him Derek, one night that, You better get a test, bro, just in case. Kyle laughed it off. But then he started noticing weird things, like how Derek would be overly nice to Kyle's fiancée, how he always offered to give her rides, how they texted late at night just about party planning. One night, Kyle gave in to the paranoia and ordered a paternity test kit. What he found blew everything to pieces. He wasn't the father. Derek was. At first, Kyle thought it was a prank. But when he confronted her, she broke down, said it was one mistake when she and Kyle were on a break. Derek said it meant nothing. Kyle didn't believe either of them. He didn't just end the engagement, he cut off Derek entirely. Blocked them both. Moved to a different state. Changed his number. Their mom tried to mediate, saying, family is family. Kyle replied, No, it's not. DNA proved that. Story 10. Back in high school, I did a genealogy project that required building a 3-generation family tree. My dad suggested I use one of those DNA kits to make it more scientific. I got the results a few weeks later and noticed something weird. I had a half-sibling I'd never met. Same age, same city. I asked them, thinking it had to be a glitch. They replied instantly, I've been waiting for this. Turns out we were born in the same hospital, on the same day. Went to my mom, thinking maybe she knew something. She denied everything, said it was impossible. Then my grandmother, quiet, conservative, church-going, called me over. She looked at the DNA results, then looked at me, and told me everything. My mom had twins, but only planned to keep one. She was 18. No support. Scared. So my grandmother made a choice. She arranged for one of the babies to be quietly adopted by a nurse's sister who just had a stillbirth. All under the table. No records. No trace. I was the twin she kept. I met my brother a week later. We have the same laugh, same dimple. My mom still denies it. My grandmother passed away last month. Took half the truth with her. But the DNA didn't lie. I have a brother. And a story I'll never stop telling. Story 11. My roommate Josh asked for a DNA test when his wife gave birth to twins. Fraternal, not identical. One looked like him. The other didn't. He said it was just for peace of mind. But when the results came back, the lab called directly. The twins had different fathers. We thought that was impossible until we Googled it, heteropaternal superfecundation. It's rare, but it can happen when 2 eggs are fertilized by sperm from different men in the same ovulation cycle. Josh was the father of one twin. The other belonged to a guy his wife swore she'd never been with while they were trying to conceive. She confessed. During a fight, she had a one-night stand with a co-worker and got pregnant with both of their babies. Josh didn't yell, didn't cry, just packed a bag and left. He pays child support for his son but refuses to have anything to do with the other twin. But because every time I look at him, I remember what I wasn't told. Story 12. My best friend Tyler got really into genealogy during lockdown. He ordered a DNA kit and spent weeks building a massive family tree. When it came back, he was thrilled, until he noticed something off. His closest match wasn't his dad. It was a man in Alabama listed as a 100% DNA match, father. Tyler was confused. His whole life he'd believed his dad, an Army vet, was his biological father. They shared nothing in common physically, but no one ever questioned it. He dug further and contacted the match. The man said he'd donated sperm in the 90s, but never knew what became of it. Tyler confronted his mom. She then admitted the truth. After years of infertility, she'd used a sperm donor without telling her husband. Her husband never knew. When Tyler broke the news to him, the man didn't say a word, just nodded, went outside, and sat on the porch for 2 hours. A week later, he left, filed for divorce, told Tyler he still loved him, but couldn't look at his wife the same again. Tyler says he found a new family tree, but he lost the roots that mattered. Story 13. At 45, my Uncle Paul took a DNA test for fun. He was the type to trace every historical link like it was a treasure map. One day, he walked into the family reunion with a folder full of documents and a face like thunder. "I'm adopted," he said flatly. We laughed. Thought it was a joke. Until he laid out the proof. Zero shared DNA with any of us. My grandparents were long gone, so no one could confirm. But Paul started contacting extended relatives and even neighbors from the old neighborhood. Then he got the letter. It was from a woman who worked at the hospital back in the 1970s. She'd seen a baby switch. 2 boys born hours apart. Paul was taken home by the wrong family, ours, and the other boy raised by his birth parents. The hospital covered it up to avoid a scandal. Paul met his biological family. They welcomed him, said they'd always felt something was missing. But what broke him? Meeting the man who should have been me, the real Paul. Same age, same smile. Totally different life. Paul didn't know which identity to keep, so he chose neither. Moved abroad, changed his name. We haven't heard from him since. Story 14. My friend Chris got married young, right out of high school. His wife got pregnant fast. Chris was thrilled. But the baby, when born, looked nothing like either of them. Pale blue eyes, red hair. Chris was dark-skinned with black curls. The whispers started early. "Mailman's baby," people joked. Chris laughed them off, until the baby turned 5 and still didn't resemble either parent. One day, he secretly swabbed himself and the kid. The results? 0% match. Chris's world shattered. He confronted his wife. She confessed to cheating once, at a graduation party. She never thought the baby wasn't his. But Chris did more than just leave. He didn't tell anyone. Instead, he invited her family to a barbecue, checked her, and played a slide DNA results. Slide 1. Let's talk genetics. Slide 2. Guess who's her? Slide 3. Ask my soon-to-be ex-wife. Then he walked out, left the grill running, and never looked back. It went viral in our town. People still refer to it as the DNABBQ, Story 15. My dad was a beloved small-town doctor. Everyone knew him, trusted him. When he passed, I wanted to honor his legacy and started building a family ancestry book. I took a DNA test to verify our medical lineage. That's when I found out I had 7 half-siblings I'd never met, all born within 20 miles of each other, all around the same age as me. I reached out. One by one, they responded, each one confused at first, then devastated. Turns out my dad wasn't just a doctor. He was also a sperm donor, but not legally. He used his own sperm in fertility procedures without telling the mothers. They thought they were using anonymous donors or their husbands. A lawsuit followed. So did media attention. He went from pillar of the community to monster with a god complex. My mom was destroyed. She swore she never knew. We had to change our last name. Move. Hide. Even now, years later, I still get emails from siblings I didn't know I had. The DNA test didn't just destroy a family tree. It uncovered a forest of lies. Story 16. My cousin Mike was always paranoid. Not jealous, just cautious. When his girlfriend got pregnant, he celebrated, but quietly bought a paternity test the same week their daughter was born. The test confirmed he was the father, but it also flagged an unusual genetic marker that prompted a health advisory. That marker? An extremely rare neurodegenerative disorder passed down only if both parents are carriers. Mike freaked out. He asked his mom about any family history. She brushed it off, so he pushed. Eventually, she told him something no one saw coming. He's not your biological father. Mike's dad, our uncle, the guy who raised him, coached his baseball team, taught him how to shave, had no biological connection to him at all. His mother confessed she'd used a sperm donor during IVF and had never told anyone. Not even her husband. Mike had to break the news to the man who raised him. The fallout? Devastating. His dad filed for separation, claimed he'd been lied to for 30 years, refused to acknowledge the test, said, "You were mine until that paper told me otherwise." Now Mike's stuck in limbo, trying to raise his daughter, track down his medical history, and somehow hold on to a man who won't even return his calls. Story 17. My buddy Eli and his dad had a rocky relationship. His dad was strict, hyper-religious, and always quick to punish. So when Eli bought a DNA kit as part of a school project in college, he didn't think twice. When he opened the results, his jaw hit the floor. He had no paternal matches, no cousins, nothing even remotely connected to his father's side. Instead, an entirely different one tied to a man from Oregon whom Eli had never heard of. He reached out. The man responded with 3 words. "I've been wondering." Turns out, Eli's mother had been assaulted while traveling for work and never reported it. She returned home, married her boyfriend, and never heard. Eli wasn't a child of love. He was the product of trauma. When he confronted his mother, she collapsed in tears and confessed everything. His father had always known. He married her to protect her, raised Eli as his own, but never emotionally bonded. Now it all made sense. The coldness, the resentment, the subtle distance. Eli says the test didn't just reveal where he came from. It explained why his childhood felt like a punishment. Story 18. Neighbor Rich was the family's golden child. Ivy League graduate. Married with kids. Big shot accountant. One Christmas, his younger brother gave everyone DNA kits for fun. 3 weeks later, Rich stopped showing up to anything. No texts, no calls, no work. His brother finally visited and found him in the garage, chain-smoking in the cold. He held out the test results. Turns out Rich was switched at birth. He'd been raised by the wrong parents. His biological family lived in the same state, and ironically, their actual child was living with Rich's real parents. Neither family had any idea. The worst part? Rich's parents knew. The hospital had called them after the mix-up was discovered when he was a baby, but they decided not to say anything. They had already bonded with him. They figured, why ruin it? He met his biological parents. They welcomed him, showed him baby photos, told him how they wondered every year what happened. Rich spiraled. Said his whole life was based on a lie. Quit his job, moved across the country, changed his name. Last I heard, he's working at a bookstore and refuses to own a phone. Story 19. My coworker Jordan had a very specific reason for asking for a paternity test: inheritance. His father had just passed, and Jordan was in line to receive a significant estate: properties, stocks, a classic car collection. But the will had one unusual condition: heirs must prove biological relation. He laughed at first. Of course, Dad's son, until the test said he wasn't. Jordan was stunned, thought it was lab error. But when he asked his mom, she turned pale and said, "We weren't supposed to talk about it." Turns out, her OB-GYN had mixed up fertility samples. She and her husband went through IVF and the wrong vial had been used. She never knew. Neither did her husband. The clinic went bankrupt in the early 2000s, so there was no recourse. Jordan wasn't eligible for the inheritance under the letter of the law. His half-brother, who was biologically related, got everything. Jordan's mom begged the family to challenge the will. They refused. "It's what Dad wanted," they said. Jordan now works 2 jobs and lives in a studio apartment while his brother drives the Porsche he grew up polishing. Story 20. In college, my friend Leo joined a frat that ran one of those Find Your Heritage events every semester. You submit a DNA kit and compare with members across campus. Harmless fun. But Leo's results flagged something unusual. 2 matches that were too close. As in, you share 50% DNA with these 2 people? One was his sister. Obvious. The other? His best friend since childhood. They were born 2 weeks apart, in the same hospital, lived on the same block, went to the same preschool. Their families were inseparable. Confused, Leo showed both families. That's when it all unraveled. Turns out their moms had been part of a shared fertility support group. When IVF didn't work, they went to the same private clinic, one that wasn't as careful as it should have been with its samples. Somehow, Leo's father's sperm had fertilized both women's eggs. Leo and his best friend were half-brothers. The revelation destroyed both families. Accusations flew. Marriages broke apart. Lawsuits were considered. Leo and his best friend? They stopped speaking. Said it was too weird. Last I heard, Leo transferred schools. Said he wanted to start fresh. Somewhere my DNA doesn't know everyone. Story 21. A friend of mine, Malik, is a meticulous guy. He's 5 steps ahead in everything. So when his wife gave birth to their first child, he quietly ordered a paternity test. Not because he didn't trust her, but because his own father had bailed after saying Malik couldn't be his. Malik just wanted closure and reassurance. He got the test and froze. He was the father. But the test also revealed something else. Malik wasn't genetically related to his dad. The man who abandoned him was telling the truth. Confused and angry, he went to his mother. She denied it at first. Then, after 3 days of silence, she handed him a letter. It was from a man named Ronald, her high school sweetheart. She got pregnant the summer before college but didn't tell him. Married someone else instead. Ronald never knew. Malik tracked him down. He lived in Detroit. Alone. No kids. When Malik showed up, Ronald wept. He'd always wondered why she ghosted him. They've since started rebuilding their relationship. But Malik's mother? She refuses to speak to him. Said he chose a stranger over the man who raised him. He told her, "You chose silence over truth." I just finally answered my own question. Story 22. Eric was adopted at birth. His parents were always open about it. But when he turned 30, he decided to find his biological roots. So he took a DNA test and joined an online search forum. After a few weeks, he matched with a woman named Cheryl, a 52-year-old who, at first glance, didn't seem related. But their DNA suggested something deeper. She reached out. Said she had a son she gave up for adoption when she was 22. Eric was ecstatic. They talked daily, shared stories, photos. Cheryl said she'd always dreamed of meeting him. Then, something strange happened. She sent him a picture of her first boyfriend. Eric recognized him. The man had been his childhood neighbor. Even more disturbing, he looked exactly like Eric. Turns out Cheryl had dated that man again years later and gave birth to a second son. Eric's childhood best friend, the boy next door. They were full brothers, or knew. Both boys were raised side by side, clueless. Now they're trying to figure out how to even process it. The moms are meeting next month, at its best. It's like our DNA made a map, and it led us back to each other. Story 23. Lucas always felt out of place. He looked nothing like his siblings, darker, different features. He joked about being adopted, but no one ever took it seriously. Until his wife got him a DNA kit as a birthday present. He laughed when he opened it. Let's see where I'm really from. A few weeks later, he got the email. You have 1,248 DNA matches. The top one? A woman named Janine, Akilen Svenjolt Shazale Kosmech, labeled twin sister. Lucas was stunned. He didn't have a twin, or so he thought. He reached out and Janine responded instantly. Her story? She was adopted from a private agency. Always felt like she had a sibling but never found proof. Turns out, Lucas and Janine were fraternal twins separated at birth due to a clerical error. One same birthmark, different lives. Their reunion went viral in the local news. But what didn't make the headlines? Lucas's parents had known and kept it from him. He hasn't spoken to them since. Story 24. My co-worker Nate always talked about his grandfather, how he was a decorated World War II vet, a strict but principled man. When his grandfather passed, the family held a ceremony and even commissioned a memorial plaque. A month later, Nate took a DNA test for a heritage deep dive and found something bizarre. His DNA matched closely with a set of siblings from Belgium. Curious, he dug deeper and discovered his grandfather wasn't in Europe during World War II as a soldier. He was there as a criminal. His real name wasn't even the one he passed down. Turns out he was part of a black market syndicate. Deserted the military, changed his identity, fled to America with a fake passport and rebuilt his life. The Belgian siblings? Children he fathered before disappearing. Nate's family was shaken. His father refused to believe it. But Nate confronted him with documents, photos, even fingerprints from military archives. The plaque was removed. The family name tarnished. Nate says he doesn't know what's worse, the lies or the fact they honored a man who ran from everything. He kept the DNA results, framed them, said, "This is the only honest heirloom I've got." Story 25. Bryce had always prided himself on being the spitting image of his dad. Same nose, same smile, same love for motorcycles. Everyone said it. It was a family joke until Bryce's daughter needed a bone marrow transplant and they began matching family members. His dad wasn't a match, not even close. That's when doctors suggested a full DNA workup. The results hit like a bomb. Bryce wasn't related to his father at all. Worse, he was related to his dad's brother. Turns out, decades ago, Bryce's mom had an affair with her husband's younger brother during a trial separation. She got pregnant, never heard. The brothers had long since reconciled and no one thought anything of it. But when the DNA came out, it tore the entire extended family apart. The uncle, his real father, tried to apologize. But Bryce didn't want to hear it. "My whole childhood," he said, "was built on the wrong man's love." He says he's grateful for the medical test. It saved his daughter's life, but it cost him a father. Story 26. Julian had always been proud of his military lineage. His grandfather fought in Korea, his dad served in Desert Storm, and he was on track to follow the same path. A family legacy built on blood, duty, and heritage. Before enlistment, his recruiter recommended a DNA screening to rule out hereditary medical risks. Julian agreed. What came back shattered everything. He had zero genetic ties to his father. He brought the results to his mom, expecting a denial or confusion, but instead she cried, hard. Then she told him the truth. During a separation, she'd had an affair with a man she never saw again. She found out she was pregnant weeks later and assumed, or hoped, it was her husband's. Julian was crushed. He didn't know who he was anymore. His father, once his idol, shut down emotionally. Said Julian had lied by existing. Julian still enlisted, but not under his father's name. He said, "I may not carry his DNA, but I carry his discipline, and that's more than enough." Story 27. My buddy Dave went to a family wedding and ended up in a heated debate with a relative over ancestry. Dave said their family was Irish-German. The other guy swore there was Scandinavian lineage somewhere. To prove his point, Dave ordered a DNA kit. The results stunned him. Not only was he not Scandinavian, he wasn't related to the family at all. At first, he thought it was a mistake. But his top DNA match, a 67-year-old man in Texas with the note, "Hi, I donated sperm in 1986. Open to connecting." Dave dug deeper. Found out his parents had struggled with infertility for years and, without telling anyone, used donor sperm. His mother never told him. His father never knew. Dave confronted his mom. She denied it. He showed her the results. She broke down and said, "I just wanted to give your father the chance to be a dad. Ever find out?" Dave says he still loves his dad, but something fundamental shifted. "I used to think we were the same blood," he told me. "Now we're never even the same story." Story 28. In our hometown, there's a guy named Alan who owned a popular bakery. Super humble, always talking about his Italian grandfather who taught him how to bake. The family recipes were his pride. One holiday, Alan decided to gift his relatives DNA kits, just for fun, to trace their culinary roots. What came back floored him. He wasn't Italian at all. In fact, he wasn't related to anyone in his family. He kept it quiet for a while, then started asking questions. Eventually, he tracked down the hospital where he was born. He requested archived delivery logs, birth times, anything. That's when he found another boy at the same time. He reached out. They met. The moment they shook hands, it was like a mirror. Both were stunned. They had the same eyebrows, smile, and weird pinky toe shape, switched at birth. The other man had grown up in a rough part of town. No stable family, no bakery legacy, just bad breaks and odd jobs. Alan was haunted. He tried to build a relationship with his biological family, but it never clicked. Now he says he wakes up every morning knowing someone else lived the life he was meant to. And worse, he doesn't know who to feel guilty for. Story 29. After a rocky breakup, my friend Ian filed for joint custody of his toddler daughter. His ex wasn't cooperative, so his lawyer advised getting a paternity test before taking it further. Ian thought it was a formality. What he got was heartbreak. He wasn't the father. The baby he fed, changed, and rocked to sleep wasn't biologically his. Worse, the real father? A mutual friend from college who'd been at their wedding. Ian confronted his ex. She admitted it, but said, "You're the one who's been there." He doesn't even want her. Ian could have walked away, but he didn't. He told the judge he still wanted visitation. Said, "I may not be her father by blood, been her father every day of her life." The court granted him limited visitation as a legal guardian, not a biological parent. The DNA test broke him, but it didn't break his bond with the little girl who still calls him Daddy. Story 30. Liam took a DNA test during a workplace health challenge. Everyone was doing it for fun. He expected a few ancestry surprises, maybe some distant cousins. Instead, he got a result that made his stomach drop. His girlfriend's dad was listed as a 50% match. Confused, he dug deeper. He and his girlfriend had been dating for 3 years. Her dad had always been oddly warm toward Liam, gave him old clothes, childhood photos, said he reminded him of someone. That someone, it turned out, was himself. Liam confronted the man privately. The man begged him not to say anything to his daughter, then finally admitted he'd had a relationship with Liam's mother in the early 90s. Never knew she was pregnant. She moved states right after. Liam didn't tell his girlfriend immediately. He didn't know how to. But when he did, she screamed, threw up, blocked him. The relationship ended instantly. They were half-siblings. Liam says he hasn't dated since. I still love her. That love just feels wrong. Story 31. Trevor wasn't the kind of guy to rock the boat. Quiet, polite, always kept the peace in his large, blended family. His dad remarried when Trevor was 6, and they'd been one big unit ever since. But when his daughter was born with a rare metabolic condition, doctors recommended genetic testing for both parents, and that's when everything fell apart. The results showed a mutation that couldn't have come from either Trevor or his wife. So they tested again. This time they included Trevor's parents. His mom matched. His dad did not. The man who raised him, the man he called Dad for 28 years, wasn't related to him at all. He confronted his mom. She admitted that during a trial separation from her husband, she'd had a brief fling with a family friend, a man who moved away shortly after. She never thought it'd resurface. DNA tests weren't a thing back then. Trevor's dad was heartbroken. Not angry, just broken. He started sleeping in the guest room. Stopped speaking at family dinners. Eventually, he packed a bag and moved into a condo without a word. Trevor said, "I didn't ask for this test to fuss, but somehow I became the reason everyone's pretending again." Story 32. Sam always hated family reunions. Too many people asking too many questions. But at the last one, his cousin brought up DNA kits. "Let's all do it, see who's got Viking blood," he joked. Sam agreed, more out of boredom than interest. When the results came back, he laughed at their tiny percentages, until Sam noticed something odd. He shared no DNA with anyone in his family. No siblings. No cousins. No parents. He emailed the company. They confirmed there was no mistake. He went to his parents. His mom cried immediately. His dad just walked out of the room. Later, his mom told him the truth. They had a stillbirth. The hospital offered an anonymous adoption option, a baby who'd been surrendered that day. Sam was placed in their arms before the hour ended. They never told anyone. Not even close family. Sam said it felt like his whole childhood had been a movie script. A beautiful lie acted out with perfect choreography. He's met his birth mom since. She's kind, regretful, married now with 3 other kids. They know about Sam. They've welcomed him. But he says he feels like a ghost floating between 2 homes, seen but never fully belonging to either. Story 33. Dylan's wife joked that their newborn daughter looked like their mailman. Big eyes, red curls, cheeky smile. Everyone laughed. Dylan laughed too, but something nagged at him. 3 weeks later, he bought a paternity test, just to kill the voice in his head. What came back was worse than his worst-case scenario. He wasn't the father. But the biological father? It wasn't the mailman. It was his own dad. He ran the results again through another lab to be sure. Same outcome. He confronted his wife. She collapsed, sobbing. Said it happened once, a year ago. She was drunk. He was comforting her after a fight with Dylan. It was a mistake, she kept saying. Dylan didn't say a word. He went straight to his father's house and left the results on his porch. Then he blocked them both. He's raising the baby alone now. says she's innocent in all of this. But every time someone says she has his father's eyes, he looks away. Story 34. Omar took a DNA test out of curiosity. He always wondered why he looked so different from his siblings. Darker complexion, taller, curlier hair. Family just brushed it off as genetic variety. What he found flipped his life upside down. His results matched with a 43-year-old woman listed as mother. That didn't make sense. His mother was 60. He contacted the woman. She was confused too. She'd placed a baby for adoption in 1984, assumed he was raised elsewhere. Turns out Omar had been kidnapped as a baby. The woman had filed a police report. A nurse at the hospital disappeared the same day. Case went cold. No one was ever found. Her baby, Omar, was gone. The family that raised Omar had bought him from a private facilitator. No questions asked. Likely unknowingly. Now Omar is dealing with two families, one who raised him lovingly under false pretenses and one who mourned him for 4 decades. He says he doesn't know which name to use anymore. Omar isn't even the one on his birth certificate. Story 35. When Jordan's grandpa died, they found a stack of old notebooks in the attic. One of them had detailed charts of family trees going back centuries. Everyone thought it was fascinating. Jordan, a history nerd, got curious and took a DNA test to verify the info. What he found wasn't just inconsistent, it was damning. Not only was he not Scottish, as the tree claimed, but he also had 0 relation to the paternal side. None. More digging revealed that his great-grandmother had had an affair during World War II while her husband was deployed. The child she gave birth to, Jordan's grandfather, wasn't her husband's at all. Meaning, the entire family tree, proudly traced back to Scottish lairds and battles and castles, fake. Jordan's dad didn't take it well. Years of family pride, clan reunions, tartan kilts, and heirlooms, all based on a man who was never part of their bloodline. Jordan says it felt like someone pulled a trap door under his last name. Now he keeps the notebooks locked in a drawer. And the tartan? Folded in a box marked fiction. Story 36. Marcus was always the glue in his friend group, logical, loyal, calm. When he proposed to his girlfriend after 6 years together, no one was surprised. What did surprise everyone was that right after the proposal, he asked for a DNA test for their son. She was shocked. Hurt. He said he just wanted certainty before they became a forever family. The results crushed him. He wasn't the father, but that wasn't the worst part. The test showed a 99.9% match to his best friend, Caleb. They had been roommates back when the baby was conceived. Marcus remembered working double shifts while Caleb stayed home with her to help. He remembered brushing off the weird tension between them. He remembered trusting them. He confronted Caleb first. Caleb admitted it. It was once. I didn't think it'd happen again. His fiancée begged for forgiveness. Said it was a mistake, that Caleb meant nothing. Marcus walked away from both of them. Sold the ring, moved out. Took nothing but a backpack. To this day, Caleb and his ex are together. But Marcus? He refuses to even say their names. Story 37. When Vincent's mom died, he inherited an old photo album she had always kept locked away. He expected baby pictures, maybe a few family secrets. Found instead were photos of her with a man who wasn't his father, holding hands, kissing, standing in front of a courthouse. A marriage certificate fell out of the back sleeve. She'd been married before his dad and had a child. He looked up the name of that child and found a match on a genealogy site. Curious, he took a DNA test. That's when everything broke. The match didn't show as a half-brother. It showed as a full sibling. Vincent wasn't his father's son. He was a second child from her first marriage. His entire upbringing, his dad's pride, the fishing trips, the father-son bonding was built on a lie. Confronted his father. The man went silent. Then, in a voice Vincent will never forget, said, I always knew. I just didn't want you to know. Vincent said the betrayal wasn't the biology. It was the years of pretending, of knowing and never telling. Story 38. During a school science fair, Ethan's 12-year-old son did a DNA project with his class. Each student had to submit a saliva sample with one parent to study inherited traits. Ethan thought it was adorable, until he got a call from the teacher. The school flagged a discrepancy and wanted privately. He submitted a second test, this time directly through a lab. Results, Ethan wasn't the biological father. His wife confessed immediately. She had been with someone else around the time they conceived, someone she never contacted again. Ethan said he felt like someone had carved out his insides, not because of the lie, but because he hadn't seen it coming. But then something stranger happened. He didn't leave. He stayed, continued raising the boy, told no one, not even the child. When I asked why, he said, because biology gave her a son. But I gave him a father, and I don't need DNA to prove that. Story 39. Daniel was always interested in family history. He prided himself on being the last Thompson, the only male in his line. His dad died when he was young, and Daniel had spent years honoring him, tattoos, stories, even naming his son after him. As a Father's Day gift to himself, he took a DNA test to verify their lineage. What came back made him question his identity. He wasn't a Thompson. His DNA matched no one in the known family tree. Not his cousins, not his aunts, no one. In fact, his paternal matches led to a family named Arloff, several states away. Confused, he called his mother. She didn't answer for 2 days. Then she left a voicemail. I was young. I was scared. I never thought it would matter. Turns out she had a relationship with a man she never told anyone about. And when she found out she was pregnant, she passed the child off as her late boyfriend's son. Daniel's dad had already passed in an accident. No one questioned it. Daniel says he still visits his father's grave. He's considering dropping it. Because, he said, if my whole life was built on a name, maybe it's time to choose one myself. Story 40. Reed was adopted at birth and had no interest in finding his biological parents. His adoptive family was loving, supportive, everything he ever wanted. But his wife convinced him to take a DNA test so their daughter could understand her health history. He agreed. Reluctantly. 3 weeks later, a woman messaged him. I think I'm your sister. Reed. She shared photos, faces that looked like his. Same jawline, same eyes. Then she said something that chilled him. I think our parents still live in the same house. They never stopped looking for you. Reed found out he hadn't been legally adopted. He'd been stolen. His biological mother had fallen into a coma during labor. A rogue nurse, a woman who had recently lost her child, smuggled Reed out of the hospital. Falsified paperwork. Disappeared. Reed was that baby. The story made national headlines. Arrests were made. Lawsuits filed. Reed? He met his biological parents. They hugged him like they'd never let go. But he still calls his adoptive mom every Sunday. Because, as he puts it, one woman gave me life. Another gave me love. I won't choose between them. Story 41. Elliot was the kind of guy who never second-guessed anything. Married his high school sweetheart, lived in the same town his whole life, worked for his dad's plumbing company. But when his wife got pregnant, his cousin, half-joking, said, You're the only ginger in the family. Better check if that baby comes out with curls. Elliot laughed. Then, out of curiosity, he ordered a DNA kit. Not for the baby, for himself. He wanted to prove his Irish heritage. He got something else entirely. He wasn't Irish, or Scottish, or even remotely European. His results showed predominantly Southeast Asian ancestry. Confused, he tested both his parents. His mom matched. His dad did not. When Elliot confronted them, his mom stared while his dad stood frozen. Eventually, she admitted the truth. Elliot was the product of an affair with a man she met during an overseas study abroad program. She never told anyone, not even her husband. Elliot's dad left the next morning. No warning. No note, just gone. Elliot hasn't seen him since. He tracked down his biological father overseas, but the man had passed away earlier. He says, I grew up fixing pipes with a man who taught me everything, but couldn't fix the biggest leak in our lives.